It's Thursday, April 16th, and you are joining episode 4 of the still unnamed podcast, aka the Ryan and Alex Lore podcast. Alex, welcome back. How you doing?
I'm good. Our beards are growing thick and filling in. Mine's getting grayer, but we are committed,
Good
folks,
chin
to
gray.
naming this thing. I know it's so gray. It's weird. Um, we are committed to naming this thing this weekend. All right. So the next time that we intro the show, it's going to be named "Welcome to the Blank Podcast." But we're going to do it. We're committing to it, and you can call us out if we don't follow through. Kind of like we're announcing to the world that we registered for a race. You know, once you put it out there,
Yeah,
there's a
it's
little bit
there.
of yeah. You got some
And
heat on
and
you.
and just like registering for a race, we can't guarantee it's going to be really good. It may be really bad, but we're going to do it. Like,
We might DNF. Yeah,
yeah. Ooh, I think we might have a name. Nice work.
we might
Well,
DNF. Just
well,
did not finish podcast.
Al, any updates in your world since last week's show?
Not a ton, man. Just getting the runs in and trying to keep the little guy entertained. Work has I've been working a lot, which I'm grateful for. I know a lot of people want to be in that position. I think we're all kind of hesitantly. The people who are working hard, but also you know you're holding your breath and hoping for the best. But yeah, we're I'm slugging out a mile or two here and there, and I throwing in some kettlebells here and there as well, which
Ooh,
I'm terrible
nice.
at. I just get like I'm so bad at kettlebells. Every time I come back to them, I just get totally wrecked for like 2 weeks. I don't, and they're not heavy either. I'm just not in that sort of fitness, Ryan.
My kryptonite, which is weird, what is pull-ups. And like when I was in college and I was fit
Hmm.
and pretty light runner, lean, right? I could knock out a bunch of pull-ups. A few years ago, I did the Murph. If you're familiar with
Hmm.
the Murph, it's
Hmm.
CrossFit, really famous CrossFit workout named after a Navy SEAL. And so it's like rounds of squats and push-ups and pull-ups, and there's like a mile run at the front and the back end of it all. And I hadn't done any weight lifting or like even body weight stuff for years, and I just hopped in with Ray Machuca and Martin Floriani. It's on is it Labor Day, right? And
I think
or
so.
Memorial Day. Sorry,
Yeah.
Memorial Day was when all CrossFit gyms do the Murph, and I just was like, yeah, I'll do it, And I couldn't do pull-ups for, no lie, at least a year after that. And so we joined a gym not too long ago, which has been on pause since this pandemic has hit. And we had like a body weight day, and it involved pull-ups, and I was so terrible. So it's definitely the piece I need to work on. It has not come back yet.
Nice. Nice.
So, but I will say something that will help me with that is my fiance is into aerials and silks, if you know what that is. So she's been asking me
Yeah.
for like 2 years to hang one on the tree in our backyard. So we finally did it, and she's been doing that, and I'm starting to learn some silks out there. I got an
All
artistic side to me.
right.
I never even knew.
All right.
Yeah.
Ryan Exotic.
So,
Ryan Exotic, dude.
well, we've had a lot of good conversation, and this week, I know you and I really had wanted to dig into the brand side of the sport and how it's been affected right now. I think it's a huge piece, right? It's a huge pillar of what the sport is and how it's funded and supported, and how the athletes are supported and funded. And Al, you spent a few years at Adidas on the brand side. So just curious on your thoughts on if you've spoken to anyone at Adi and just how that side's being affected right now.
Well, I mean, first off, like whatever brand it is, you're being affected right now, and I think as the large scale retailers, especially the major brands, are all being heavily impacted. And I know all the brands are kind of scrambling. I know some are furloughing. I can't imagine the hit that some of these, you sometimes ride the wave of that Olympic momentum, and having that, trying to ride that wave and build towards this moment, and then all of a sudden having that taken away, and now combine that also with a recession where all of a sudden, your marketing budget and has to work a lot harder. Things start to get targeted. Specialty running gets targeted because in the grand scheme of things, guys, we have to understand that yes, running shoes is the cash cow. The price point market running shoe is how brands make money worldwide, especially in the US and China. That's the $100 running shoe is where brands make money. It's not in the specialty world. That is a small nugget of the overall budget of a brand every year. However, it is the greatest driver and the greatest culture driver of the brand. And I think, when you lose some of that momentum and that like support on the specialty and like maybe some of the R&D that goes into specialty running, it hurts our industry and it hurts our community. And I mean our community, meaning you and I's friends. I mean, we know a lot of people who are hurting right now. And that's one of the reasons we started this podcast is, again, we wanted to put everybody in one place and get as much knowledge out there to help every tier of our network.
Yeah, and we do have a good friend that we know and love in the industry, and he's going to be a guy joining us today to help really give the insight on what's happening right now, and specifically what's happening right now at New Balance. This guy is an inspirational man to talk to. If you've never spoken to him before, you can talk to him for hours, and it feels like minutes. I will be very surprised if this podcast isn't one of our longest ever, because he's so knowledgeable and such a charismatic person to speak with. And I think we should probably just get him on and get him going here, and introduce a former NCAA cross country champ to the show. So let's introduce this man. Coming in hot from Park City, Utah, Mr. Keith Kelly. How's it going?
It's going great, Ryan. Great to be here. It's great to be here in Park City as well as here in this virtual Zoom meeting. It's wonderful.
I
didn't grow a beard. I know I didn't grow a beard.
You didn't get the memo.
Nor did I wear a baseball cap. So
no.
Not good on two of the quick marks.
You're on the fringe. You're outside.
We'll bring
but I do have a microphone.
Bring the quality audio. Yeah.
Okay, no problem.
So Keith, a lot of great stuff to talk about today. I first want to give people a little taste of your running background. You were NCAA champion cross country. You made the world cross team for Ireland back in 2001. You were 24th, and then you dealt with a lot of injuries, and then 7 years later, out of nowhere, you become an Irish champ again. And, I just want to rewind that. I know, that's probably some tough memories as well, but like just to give people a glimpse at how quickly you were able to get in shape after not really doing much. I mean, it was I remember you and I had met probably within a year or two of that. And, you went from not really doing anything to all of a sudden I see a headline that you won Irish champs. I was like, where did he go?
Yeah. So, the long story short is I'm not very good at running. I was never very good at running, but I had the ability to get fit quickly. And, the one year in college that I really took running seriously was the year I won nationals, and I took it seriously and it was awesome. But very quickly after the first year out of college, I got some really, really bad injuries. And the next 2 years were basically, I didn't really run. In 2003, I got some good training done. And because I moved down to the 1,500 meters to try and see if lower volume and more intensity would improve my biomechanics and help. So I got down, I ran about 340 for 1,500 and then got another big stress fracture in my back and another stress fracture in my pelvis. So I had to pack it in for a couple of years, and then 2005, try to come back again, only to get another stress fracture and then some severe knee pain. And then I pretty much decided I was just going to kind of have fun and run when I was not injured. And when I'm injured, I won't run. And then after 2 years of really not doing anything except an occasional jog here and there, maybe 20 miles a week, I just felt all right again. And I got an iPod Shuffle, and I loved the technology of being able to run with music. So I would just put some of my favorite songs on the shuffle and go out and run on Blackstone Boulevard in Providence and just run back and forth. Started out with 1 mile, then 2 miles, and then got up to 8 miles a day. I got a Garmin Forerunner, which was also new technology at the time. And I was like amazed at being able to look at pace and how fast I was able to do my training runs. And, within a couple of months, I was running 10 milers in 55 minutes. And I was like, this is pretty good. So maybe I should throw some structure in. So I called Ray Tracy up, and I'm like, Ray, give us a few workouts. And Ray put together a little program. And yeah, that was Christmas. And then in February or early March, won the Irish Nationals. And it was awesome. I was so happy because I'd never won a senior Irish title, even though I was an NCAA champion. And I was so happy. And I was cooling down with Vinny Mulvey. I don't know if you remember Vinny. He ran at Iona. Great guy. Yeah. And we were doing laps of the track, because the cross-country meet was behind the national running track, Santry. And I said, let's cool down on the track. And as I was cooling down on the track, Vinny was like, oh, you're gonna be going to Jordan to run World Cross. It's going to be amazing. And I said, Vinny, I'm not going to go to Jordan. I don't think I'm ever going to run again, because the pain in my knee was so bad that I felt like I was being stabbed by a machete. So we did about 800 meters of a cool down, and I was like, I can't cool down. And Vinny's like, oh, you'll be grand after a day. And I was like, nope, this is bad. And sure enough, I had a double stress fracture in my knee that I got during the race. And I had to get knee surgery because it fragmented bits of my bone. And that was 2009, and I haven't run ever since, apart from an occasional.
I gotta say too, you were in Providence back then. I got to come up a number of times to do a bunch of filming for Flow Track, and I remember there was a day where you're like, man, I went on my first run today. It felt okay, and then it was like the next day I saw you and be like, man, I went for another run, and I closed in like 5:05, and I felt pretty good, and I was like,
yeah. This doctor, well, not a doctor, but he's a very good physiotherapist. His name is Ger Hartman. He worked a lot with athletes over the years. He was very close with Paula Radcliffe back when she broke the world record in the marathon. And he said to me, he says, your problem is you've got an engine that's really, really good, but it's sitting in the chassis of the cheapest piece of crap car you can imagine. So the engine's no good if the wheels and if the suspension and if all the mechanics of the car don't work. So he's like, you should really, consider doing something else. And many other doctors have said the same thing to me, So I took up cycling, and that was fun. But I love running. I think running's the best in the world, and it's so accessible, and I love cross-country running more than anything. This debate right now with all the shoes, and I keep thinking this is a great time to bring back cross-country, because it doesn't matter what you have on your feet. It's all about the course, the elements, the mud, the weather, hills, downhills, trail. I think cross-country is the greatest aspect of running, and it was always my favorite. It was what I was good at. I was not good at track, and I wasn't great on the roads, but cross-country, the great equalizer. I love it. Yeah. And I'm glad I got to do some of it, even though I didn't have a great career. I had a couple of moments in the sunshine, and they were fantastic. And I got to meet all you guys. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, there was, whether it was many moments or just a few moments, there were some very exciting moments that a lot of people will never experience. So a lot to be proud of there. So, but that said, Keith, you have had the chance to stay involved in the sport in a special way, I'd say. I think I met you in 2008, kind of in a grassroots capacity when you were at Reebok. I remember the Manhattan Invitational. We were out there on the course together.
That's right.
Now with New Balance. Can you give us a quick overview of where you're at now and what you're doing?
Yeah, absolutely. And those were great days. I remember Flow Track, and I the team at Reebok with Todd Klein and Pat Joyce and Jennifer Thomas, like they were some of the like original people to work with Flow Track. And I remember Mark coming up and you coming up, and I think you guys might have crashed at Kim Smith's house when I was living there back then. I
Multiple
know
times. Yeah.
occasionally I would wake up in the morning and walk out, and there'd be a body on the couch, and it'd be a Flow Track person, most likely Ryan. But great days. So after the Reebok stint, Reebok divested in running, and it was clear that the direction Reebok was going was not a direction I wanted to go, and I wasn't too sure what I was going to do, and just by chance a job opened up at New Balance, and I was friends with Tom Carlio, and my previous boss at Reebok, Kevin Adams, were both at New Balance and kind of leading this charge along with Jenny Simpson, and John Evans was there, and John obviously was the person who signed me when I came out of college to run for New Balance. So I had a lot of connections, and when this job opened up, I said, this was perfect. And I had happened to have met Tom Carlio a few times on the just the industry circuit around events and so on and so forth. And we had a beer at I think it was the Boston Marathon and at Solus in the bar at the Lenox, and we talked about New Balance, and I obviously had a history with New Balance, so it just worked out really well. Right at the end of my visa stint, where I probably would have had to go back to Ireland, I got the opportunity to work at New Balance, and I started there in the winter of 2011, and it was really the start of a renaissance at New Balance. We were typically a marathon running dude brand, and they signed Jenny Simpson and built a vision around Jenny to get more women who are amazing in the middle distances, and to build this team to be the best middle distance female running team, which is so unexpected from New Balance at that time. And John Evans and Tom, they did it, and Josh Rowe was there at the time, and they did it. They executed, and I held various roles throughout that journey. And now I'm brand manager for Running Specialty, and I work back with my original boss, Kevin Adams, and leading the charge with him and a couple of West Coast and East Coast sales managers, and one of my former co-workers in the global marketing team, who's now also on the US specialty team, Harry Norton, 401 miler, and he's down in Carborough.
Dartmouth.
And Dartmouth, that's right. And Sue Scott, and we have a nice little team, and we're basically leading the charge for running specialty in North America, and I love it. And I'm involved with the European running specialty business as well, and it's really my bread and butter. I love it.
Well, before we dig into some of the the details around that, can you there's a lot going on right now with COVID and coronavirus, and obviously the economy is kind of shut down in many ways. Where is New Balance at right now, and how have you guys been affected?
Yeah, it's not easy. It's a really, really tough time, but people are dying, so you have to put business into perspective. However, in your own world, the business is important because it affects people's lives in a different way. It's jobs and it's security and income. New Balance has been really, really good to its employees, and even though we've recently furloughed some of our employees, we furloughed employees based on the ability to get good unemployment, and with the stimulus package and the additional funds as with the stimulus package, most employees could make a pretty good monthly income, and it's a 90-day furlough. So I was fortunate to not be furloughed, but I have a lot more work now, and it's great. I'm very, very motivated. We're all very motivated to work really, really hard because we want to get our team back. We want to get everyone back employed. And you guys know James Carney, and you probably a lot of our Andrew Leatherby, and we have a bunch of really, really good runners who are part of our team, and we want to get them all back from furlough as soon as possible. So the business, I mean, New Balance has a fortunately a good digital business, and the digital business hasn't been affected as much. E-commerce in some aspects has actually increased. Our wholesale business, which is a lot of what I work with, has been affected. Businesses shut down in states. Running specialty shops are not considered essential business, even though fitness and getting shoes and getting active by yourself, keeping distance from everyone else is really good. It's really good for the body. So stores are figuring out ways of getting people shoes and apparel, whether it's curbside pickup or whether it's drop off, drop ship, where they can order through the store and then the brands will actually drop ship the product to their houses. So stores are doing innovative business, but it's not what it was, and it's probably 70 or 80% down. So there's a loss of income for all of the brands and for all of the stores. So everyone's suffering a little bit, but we're all very, very optimistic. And the brands right now, we in the running business, and especially in my world, we're not cutthroat against the other brands. They're all our friends and we want to see them all succeed. And it's been really nice to see how each brand has done something what they can do to help the COVID-19 situation and to help the specialty and wholesale partners that are out there. So New Balance has done some really, really cool stuff. I'm sure you guys have seen it. The Davis, Family Foundation donated $2 million to the relief effort, and we converted 2 of our domestic factories up in Lawrence and Norwich in Maine to manufacture face masks, personal protective equipment in the form of face masks that look really cool, and they're probably making 200,000 of those a week and getting them out there. So yeah, it's really awesome. It was actually one of the proudest things I've seen the brand do. The brand's done a lot of really incredible stuff behind the scenes. The New Balance Foundation does not like to preach about what it does, but this we did make an example of what can be done with what you have. And we have factories, we have domestic manufacturing, and we converted those factories and made these masks, and it's been an amazing story and something that we're very, very proud of. Even though I personally don't work on it, I'm very, very proud of the company for doing it. And we're going to continue to innovate on how we get shoes and apparel on customers. So lots of digital retail, and supporting retailers any way we can, whether it's giving them better dating, giving them better discounts so that they're they don't have huge bills hanging over their head, and just helping them get product when they need it.
Keith, I'm curious how we're talking about, running's down. I'm sure everything is down. Running is one of the only sports and kind of silos that are still moving while we're in this kind of climate. I'm curious, how are you able to speak to how this is affecting maybe other parts of the New Balance business, whether, for instance, cleated footwear, I've heard is taking a really hard hit. Like, how are those colleagues kind of dealing with the current situation?
Yeah, and running is down in sales in certain distribution points. The activity of running, I think, is probably at an all-time high right now. It's the one thing people can do: walk and run, and so that's why we have a lot of optimism that when things open up again, people will have changed their mindset. They may get out of the gyms. I think gyms might suffer in the short term, because people realize they can keep fit without paying a monthly gym membership. So I think gyms might suffer. But to answer your question, Alex, I can't speak specifically, but I can say that there's no doubt with sports being cancelled, it affects the sell-through of cleated product. Baseball cleats for New Balance are a big deal. We're one of the better vendors for retail in baseball cleats, and it's a big season for us, especially at Dick's and some of the bigger sporting goods stores. So with them all closed and baseball being cancelled and softball being cancelled and lacrosse being cancelled, it does really affect our business there. We got into basketball last year, and basketball has been a real great, bright North Star for us, because the basketball team signed Kawhi Leonard, who happens to be probably the best basketball player on the planet right now. And, with no all-star game and no finish out to the season, it definitely affected their plans and their business. So soccer, Liverpool FC, this is our last season with Liverpool FC. The contract runs out at the end of the season. Liverpool was having the best season of any club in the history of European club competition in the major leagues. I mean, the top 5 leagues in Europe, Liverpool were the best in history. That's how good it was. And we don't get to celebrate it. We don't get to watch them win the league by 25 points and parade the Premiership title, which they've never won the Premiership title. It's a huge deal for the end of the New Balance contract with Liverpool, and it goes away now. So a lot of parts of the business have been really, really negatively affected. And then for running, the negative effect has been more just our retail partners, the wholesale retail partners. We're still selling running shoes. We're still, working with our athletes, and our athletes can engage with the customers in really meaningful ways now over social media to keep customers and keep runners motivated. So we're busy, but other parts of the business definitely been harder hit than us.
Is there any sort of silver lining that for running in general that because it could be viewed as a resilient kind of sector in this weird economy that we're in, it's almost like people are now being finally introduced to the idea of running, right? People are finally being enabled by, how applicable and approachable running can be. So it's almost like in this moment, we get the opportunity to re-engage with people who maybe hadn't considered running or considered themselves as runners. I almost wonder if, once we kind of get through, the recession, when people maybe don't want to drop $100 on a new running shoe, could we possibly see an uptick in running footwear sales and in running specialty in general? I guess what's that? Is there an opportunity there, A, and then B, a follow-up to that? If you're worried about your local running store right now, how, I guess, from a brand perspective, and as a man who is deeply seated in the running specialty culture, are our dollars best placed going D2C, or should we go directly to, can we justifiably go to newbalance.com, or should we be putting that money away and sliding it over to our specialty friends?
Yeah, well, I have an answer for that, and it's probably not the answer that some other people at New Balance would want to hear. So let me answer the first question first. So during the recession and economic downturn in 2008, when the market went backwards, and the housing market and so on, running had a huge uptick, a huge surge after that. I think golf suffered. I think high-end cycling might have suffered. Anything that required expensive membership fees and expensive equipment suffered. But running didn't, because $100 is a lot of money, but in relative terms, it's really not. You can get a pair of running shoes and a pair of shorts and a tech shirt. You're all in for $160, and that's 3 months to 6 months of activity versus membership at a golf course or a $10,000 bike, or a ski trip, and so on and so forth. Like one lift pass for 1 day is the price of a pair of running shoes. So running actually saw a huge uptick, and I think that's going to happen again for sure. Every running specialty retailer I speak to is they obviously want this to go away, but they just want to maintain business as much as they can, hold on to staff as much as they can, because they know that when things open up, mindset's going to have changed. People will want to run. And just, New Balance sponsors the New York City Marathon. I've already been inundated with people saying, I've never run a marathon. I'm sitting at home. I'm so frustrated. I need a goal. Can you get me a New York Marathon entry? And that's the mindset. People have been in their houses for 3-4 weeks. They're going to be in their house for another 3-4 weeks. I think you're going to see a huge running boom when this opens up, and it's going to be incredible for all the brands. Now, to parlay into your second question, I think it's going to be great for running specialty, assuming they hold on to customers and D2C and .com retailers don't take all the customers. So, we definitely want to grow our DTC business. We want to grow our NewBalance.com business. You can get every New Balance product on NewBalance.com and in every color, and it's an awesome service. But we also believe that running specialty and the community of running specialty is something that you don't get from a .com service. So, you can't go for a Tuesday night run at NewBalance.com, but you can go for a Tuesday night run at Fleet Feet Austin. So you can go for a Tuesday night run at Mill City in Minnesota. So you can do these things, and you can get advice, and you can go to these running outfitters where you don't have to buy one brand. You can buy a pair of New Balance running shoes, but maybe you can buy another brand's apparel, and then you can get yourself some rehab tools, and then you can get yourself some untapped maple syrup for nutrition, and you can do all these things at a running specialty store. Did you like my untapped plug there? Good friends of mine from Vermont. Yeah. Or Scratch. Good friends with those guys, Scratch Labs. But you can get all that stuff, and I think the running specialty store, what they offer in terms of more than just a transaction, is what sets them apart. And the really good specialty stores are really good at it. They're really good at building community. And, I don't want to just drop the names of all my good friends in the industry, but there's stores all across the country that are really, really good at this. And people want community, especially after being cooped up for so long. They're going to want to get out for group runs, and they're going to want to get advice, and they're going to want to talk to someone about their running or their walking. And that's what the specialty store does. So I think I want to see specialty thrive, and I want to see New Balance thrive. I think both can. There's enough human beings out there and enough feet out there. I would just want to see runners buy New Balance running product wherever they get it. And, some of our competitors as well.
Keith, I got two follow-ups to this. One, can you kind of shed some light on right now how, you just said, we want to grow the digital business direct to consumer, but in a scenario where there's and this is just a kind of extreme hypothetical, in a scenario there's no specialty run, like what percentage of the business is that right now, and how much would you have to make up with those other outlets to not take a significant hit?
Yeah, I mean, we have a very strong relationship with running specialty, and for many years, actually up until this pandemic, we had some shoes that we didn't even sell online. We sold them in New Balance, but we didn't sell them on any of the other online retailers. We sold them just in the stores, and as a way for getting people to return to the store when they wanted a new pair. So we have a very, very deep and long relationship with running specialty, and that goes back to Jim Davis when he started New Balance. Always had great relationships with wholesale partners. So it'd be a bigger impact on us than maybe someone else right now, because of how much of our business we do through running specialty. But we also have a great consumer relationship. I mean, people like New Balance. More and more runners really, really like what we're doing. They really like the brand. So they would still, I believe, buy New Balance. And they would, if their local running store happened to go out of business during this pandemic, I think they'd go to a Running Warehouse or Roadrunner Sports or Jackrabbit Sports or FleetFeet.com or NewBalance.com, and they would still buy shoes. So I'm confident that we'll maintain our relationships with the consumer. And I'm also very confident that the running specialty channel will survive this and will thrive in the long run. So I'm very optimistic.
What on my second question, Keith, was, I think in not just specialty run, but all kind of small mom and pop or local businesses, whatever you want to call it, there's a concern about those kind of businesses making it through this time, and the question of how long is this all going to last, and how long will people be able to withstand it? What kind of stores do you see that are at the biggest risk right now? And what advice are you giving to your retailers to help them get through this?
Yeah, I mean, so there's two. I think there's two sides to the at risk. There's some stores that were already on the on the line of being profitable, or constantly, month to month, hoping to be profitable, and they could be in less fortunate areas, a little bit more blue collar areas, a little bit more rural areas where they're destination stores. Those stores are going to struggle, and they're going to struggle right now just to get through this, because they've all had to furlough staff, and already not making that much money, not super profitable, always needing a little bit of support or extra dating from the brands. It's going to be really tough for those guys. And then on the flip side, you have stores that might have remodeled in the last year or two, have big staff, are in a really nice build out and a really nice area of town, so they've got really high rent. Well, I don't know if their landlords are giving them a break on rent, but their overheads are really great. So every day that they're not open is a huge impact to their cash flow. So they're going to be affected. And then the stores that will do well are the stores that have just managed their business really well and have cash reserves and have a really, really strong connection with their community. So always, to go back to what Alex asked a little while ago, like, consumers will support those stores. They'll see that those stores are struggling, and they'll buy gift cards, and they'll order a couple of pairs of shoes, or they'll encourage friends and to support local. So there's three buckets of stores. The advice we're giving to each of them is to just be really careful and lean on all of the brands to get your best deals. So the RIA is almost like a union of running stores throughout the country, and every brand has been filling out a spreadsheet of information on the RIA on how these stores and what these stores can get from each brand. So every brand is giving extended dating, maybe an extra 30 days or an extra 60 days. So it takes the pressure off paying bills. If you do pay on time, you might get an extra discount, 5% or 10% discount. If you do need to do fill-ins to keep a customer, you can get the shoes at free shipping or a reduced cost shipping and a deep discount. So all of the brands are doing what they can, but also there's only so much we can do. We have to make money too. We have to pay staff, and we have to pay athletes, and we all have overheads as well in our buildings and in our infrastructure. So it's really, really difficult to see and to have to answer those emails when people are asking for more help than we can give them. But the advice we're giving everyone is just to hang in there, keep talking to other retailers, share stories, that's some of the podcasts we've been putting out, Ryan, ourselves have been about dealing with retail during this pandemic, and what are the best practices, and what can you do in your community that's worked somewhere else. What works in Philadelphia might also work in Minneapolis, and it might also work in Austin. So we've been reaching out, talking to as many retailers as we can, and just trying to understand what they're doing and see if they're just missing some low-hanging fruit. But every part of the country is different. Like, New York has had 750 deaths a day. So when does New York open? I don't know. Versus, parts of California, parts of Oregon that are actually getting ready to open for business. So it's tricky to give, just one piece of advice. But what we're doing, and what I know the other brands are doing, is we're finding out what's working, and we're sharing that information as much as we can with every running store. I'm just, if a store opens and it happened to be already struggling, I don't know if some of the stores will make it through this if it continues much longer. The really good stores will, and then the stores in those high rent areas, they might just find themselves in a bit of a hole that they have to dig out of a little bit longer after the fact.
Keith, I'd like to lean into a little bit of product chat now, because I think we're at a really interesting kind of apex of where, especially your running footwear is going right now. And, we were on the cusp of this giant kind of arms race and new realm of of as far as technology and even price points. Now that kind of trajectory has run itself right into a recession. And so I'm wondering, like, from a product standpoint, are we going to see our margins, are the margins that maybe the supply chains are challenging, the product creators to hit, are those going to be do those have to be a little healthier? So are we going to see maybe a little less R&D? Are we going to see maybe a little less push for that next kind of iteration of fresh foam or whatever it be? And I guess overall, will running footwear become less specialized? Because I think if you look at other industries that we work with, we keep seeing, there's more of an emphasis on value instead of specialization. And I'm wondering, given that we were, with all these Alpha Flies and these, specific racing flats and these specific trail shoes, what sort of impasse are we at now? And I guess what sort of effect will that have on product technology and then the overall range of what New Balance might be offering each season?
Yeah, I personally, I don't, from a New Balance perspective, I don't think it's going to have a huge impact. It's going to push out launches for the next kind of 18 months. I think everything will get, the knock-on effect. We're not going to launch new product in June. That will get launched maybe in late summer or in early fall. Therefore, the product launches that were coming in early fall might get pushed out till 2021. So you'll definitely see a shift in the calendar of new products being introduced into the market. But the product life cycle is 18 months to 24 months. So, New Balance has some incredible innovation coming that, in the fall and in S121, that stuff is still ongoing. So by the time, those products come out, we will be hopefully in a different and much better world. And I don't think we'll see much of an impact personally. It is really interesting, the whole footwear debate and arms race that was happening right after Christmas in January and in the build up to the Olympic trials. It was insane. And, this, who's gonna have product that can compete with the Nike product? Is the Nike product fair? Is the Alpha Fly too much? Has it jumped the shark and are we now running with springs on our feet? And then there was the whole world athletics decision on how thick a midsole can be, and you can only have one carbon fiber plate, and you have to have a shoe in market for a certain amount of time before it can be used at the Olympic Games. And some brands had new product coming out that wouldn't have been in market commercialized for long enough, so that would give the advantage back to the Alpha Fly. It was crazy. And then the day after the Olympic trials, which was an incredible event, the day after the Olympic trials, no one really talked about it, and then this pandemic happened and no one's mentioned it since. So I'm really, as a fan of the sport and then as a fan of footwear and in the industry, I'm really eager to see what comes of this. When are we going to start talking about carbon fiber shoes and shoes making runners faster again? But I do know from a New Balance perspective and from some of the competition, there are some great shoes coming out. Hoka has great shoes, Brooks, Saucony, Asics, I know they've all got carbon shoes that are coming out that are really, really good. I think New Balance, we just launched the TC, which is like a trainer competition shoe. And then we have an elite version coming out later on in the year that will be probably affected by the pandemic in terms of release date, but it's incredible. And everything we're hearing about these products is that they're equally as good as everything else out there, if not better. My bias is to say that they're better, and I'm super excited. So I don't think we're going to see a stop in innovation. And then from the value proposition, New Balance is a full range brand. You have some of your vertical brands like a Brooks and a Hoka that don't play in the lower price points. New Balance always has. So we have a big business at Family Shoe, and we have a big business at some of the moderate department stores with the shoes at $39.99. So we've always played on both ends of the spectrum, but we have a fully funded team against innovation, and we have athletes that want that they want the fastest product that's out there. Jenny Simpson wants the best spike out there. Emma Coburn wants the best spike out there. Sydney McLaughlin wants the best spike out there. Emily Sisson wants to make sure that when she toes the line, that no one else has an advantage over her in footwear. So that pressure is on the product team, and yeah, they're charging against that standard. So I'm excited. I think we're still going to see great innovation in footwear, but it's a bit mental. It was a bit mental before the trials, right? I don't know if you guys were, you must have been close to it. Oh man.
Yeah, I mean, you called it arms race. It's like I was listening to you talk. It's kind of like, did this pandemic actually hit the pause button and allow other brands to almost catch up a little bit? Where Nike had the jump on everybody, and does this give these brands an opportunity to catch up?
I mean, I've never seen it, and you guys have never seen anything like this. I mean, these shoes do make people quicker. And I'll take there are marathon runners from back when I was running that were like 2:15 guys that were better than some of the 2:12 guys now. I can tell you that much. So the shoes do work, but it just got a bit mental. And we were joking internally about like making shoes with like 5 carbon fiber plates and like this thick, just for fun, because it's a bit mental. But listen, kudos to Nike. They have always been an innovative brand, and they created something that changed the history of running. It's one of those moments in time, and it's made every other brand have to step up, and other brands realize that they too can change running, and everyone produced some really kick-ass product. The shoes looked incredible down in Atlanta, and it would have been incredible to see what footwear came out at the Olympics. But we'll have to wait till 2021, and I think in 2021, as a result of this pause, I do think you're going to see a much more level playing field. So that's a positive that's coming out of it.
It's interesting because there was a lot of drama, right? And is it fair? Is it unfair? But what was interesting to see, and Alex, I feel like you and I talked about this, the way brands responded, is it did really push innovation in a way we haven't seen in a while. And, the brands didn't throw their hands up and say, oh, this is unfair, Nike, stop doing this. They said, shoot, we got to get on this train and catch up, because they've kind of struck a nerve here.
Yeah, the brands were frustrated with the World Athletics decision. That really brought it to the forefront. I mean, to come out with Seb Coe and these guys to come out with these rules that seemed kind of arbitrary. They didn't ask the other brands. They didn't ask New Balance or Brooks or Saucony, like, hey, what are you guys doing? What's your product cadence, and where are you in the life cycle of this new product? Because we want to come out with some guidance. They just came out and said, hey, your shoe has to be commercialized for 3 months before the Olympics, or else it's illegal. And that's not fair on a company that's invested a ton of money, who was planning on releasing a shoe in June of the Olympic year. That means it would have been deemed illegal to wear at the Olympic Games. So the World Athletics decision seemed to favor Nike and the Nike product. But in the end, the brands did go and meet with World Athletics and get it changed. And in the end, it was a moot point, because there is no Olympics this year, and we're back to hopefully a level playing field. But crazy. Yeah. Absolutely crazy. I couldn't deal with talking about it anymore. Everyone I talked to, like, so what do you think? I'm like, I tell you what I think. The shoes are brilliant. I wish I had them. It would have been amazing. Maybe I wouldn't be so injured, and maybe I would have run a good
coming
marathon.
Out of retirement. Here
I'll make one last push for a Masters. Well, I don't know. Look at Abdi. Abdi's a master, and he's running as fast as he's ever run. Unbelievable.
Yes.
Yeah, it's good stuff, Ryan.
Keith, I wonder. You mentioned this a little bit earlier, when we talk about, I guess, what the shoe innovations have done, like the innovation that it is accelerated, I guess, across brands, right? And you also kind of touched on the idea of, not really rooting against any other brands. I think we as like a running community know how small our world is. and how petty sometimes it can be. And so, we try to just root for the sport, and we try to root for the people in it. I'm curious, when I was around the Audi team, when we started talking about Kipchoge and going for the sub 2 effort, I was in the camp of, like, honestly, I loved it. I appreciated the pursuit overall of it, and I appreciated the people involved, and I guess, in Eliud Kipchoge's identity overall. I wonder, like, how are you as somebody who's a competitor, obviously, to Nike, but I guess, what was your view on the pursuit of it, and I guess the perception around the overall sub 2 effort? Were you able to appreciate it as just a pure running fan?
Yeah, I mean, I'll speak just for myself and not for people at New Balance. Me personally, I definitely preferred the first one. I preferred the when he didn't break it and he ran and he almost broke it, more so than the second one. And for a number of reasons. The second one, the production that Ineos did was incredible, and he had Elliot had better shoes on, and what he did was incredible. But I also, as a fan of the sport and being very close to the sport, I know what I took it for what it is. I to me, the first real sub 2 has to happen in a marathon, a sanctioned marathon, where it's not a pace car and lasers and a arrowhead of pacers around one runner who gets bottles handed to him whilst he's running or while she's running. So I think that for what it was incredible. The first one I really did enjoy. I got up and watched it. And yeah, I really enjoyed it. And then the second one, when he did it, I wasn't surprised. I was surprised at how easy it looked. I mean, he bounced across the line. He looked like he could have done another couple of miles. But for what it was great. It brought a lot of attention to running. I think the runs in Berlin were just as impressive, the 2:01. And I think I would have loved to have seen this head-to-head with Bekele, with a fit Kenenisa Bekele like he was last fall in London. I think it would have been made for an incredible race. And that's the more pure aspect of the sport that I personally like, versus some of the theatrics around. This breaking 2 theatrics were incredible, but to me, they were theatrics, and there was an element of it that was just pure stage. And it was great. It brought a lot of attention to running and created this footwear arms race that, now runners have amazing choices. And Kipchoge just seems like such a great guy, right? He seems like a true, just salt of the earth runner that you're rooting for. But yeah, it is what it is. But sub 2, I think it needs to be done in a sanctioned course, and it needs to be done in a different set of circumstances. But there's no doubt the human being ran sub 2, and it was incredible. Just hard to fathom, really, right? 2 sub 60-minute half marathons back to back. This is the pace, and then, but the times that have come since that, there's been some incredible performances in running, and maybe it is the shoes, or maybe people have just been like, you know what? I mean, there could be some other reasons. We know that. But maybe some people are just fired up. But like the girl breaking Paula Radcliffe's record in Chicago by a minute, it's incredible. And then that 15K, was it that 15K world record in Spain in the fall, was so fast. It was hard to fathom. I think it was a 15K or was it 20K? I can't remember. But some of these times that have come out now that people are running are so incredible. And running's changed. The sport is different now, and I think breaking 2 and the innovation that came with breaking 2 has created fast times across the board, and runners are in a, who would have thought that like 2:11 wasn't that good anymore? Like 20 years ago, 2:11 was the fastest time by an American, and now it's an also ran for some of these guys. So I think breaking 2 and the innovation around it has definitely changed the sport. But
yeah,
as an event, I really enjoyed the first one. It was pretty cool.
I'd echo that. I mean, I think the first one, that's just the whole behind the scenes of it, how they planned it, the amount of science that went into it. I mean, it was cool. The second one, you were almost like, I mean, he better do it. He was so close. But I do think I think what it's done is it's broke. There was so much debate about the barrier. That barrier is now broken, and I think now the thing that has to happen is, it has to happen in a kind of a sanctioned race in an environment that we all know, that all runners know, right? They're all a part of, and I think that will really bring it home. And in the ideal world, it's a head-to-head competition where two guys are going after it together. So I think that hopefully at some point we'll be able to see that. But we're talking about an elite guy, Keith, and that I think it's a good segue into the elite athlete side of what's going on right now. I'd like to get the perspective for you guys on how are the brands and New Balance specifically playing a role in athletes' lives right now that might be different than how you normally work with them while events are happening and whatnot.
Yeah, it's a good question, because right now it's very real time in my world. Stores and whether it's e-commerce or brick and mortar, the running business is looking to engage athletes more than ever right now, and our athletes are super keen to engage because they're at home, they're training, but they're not really doing the intensity right now. They're training to maintain fitness or to increase base fitness. So, just last night we did an event with Fleet Feet Chicago and their race team, and we had Jenny Simpson Zoom call, and Jenny was in our home, and she was just talking about, obviously a bit of background on her career and her best races and so on and so forth. But then she spoke about how she's staying motivated during the pandemic. She has no goal. The Olympics were cancelled. Like, how does she deal with that? And it was awesome. It was just awesome to hear her perspective. She said something that I thought was really interesting, that she says athletes, when they get to the meat of the season, always wish they had more work done. They always say, I wish I just had another month to train. She's like, well, now you've got like 4 months to do base. So no one's got an excuse. And she says she's going to maintain fitness through this period, and she's going to do a lot of miles and maybe more base than she's usually done, so that when she does sharpen the pencil, she's going to be really, really sharp and strong. So where are you? Emma Coburn's prolific on social media. She's giving tips on how to stay strong at home. Our Team Manchester group over in the UK, they're doing really, really good instructional video. Ciara McGean and the coach Steve Vernon, they're doing really good instructional video on ways you can use your home to be fit. And it might be like putting books in a backpack and doing squats with the backpack on, or doing push-ups and doing sit-ups with the backpack on, or using 2 chairs to do dips. And so they're doing great routines. So our athletes are super engaged, more so than ever. And then we're getting stores that are like, can we do a Zoom call with one of your athletes, or can we get a video from one of your athletes that we can share on our social media about staying fit and staying motivated during the pandemic? So we're getting a lot of that, and we have a lot more coming up, some of these events, and I'll be on these events talking to the athletes, and it's just good banter. They want to do it. And speaking just from a New Balance perspective, we have such a good relationship with Team New Balance. It's like truly family, that I go through John Evans and Kevin Quadrosi, of course, but I can send a text to an Emma or a Jenny or someone and say, hey, can you just shoot a little 2-minute video to say, stay motivated, stay driven, so that we can send it to a running store. And they're doing that, and they love doing it. So yeah, we're having a really, really fun time with this and the athletes. And again, when this pandemic ends and people get back out again, I think Team NB are going to have a ton of new fans that they didn't have before, and they're going to have a lot of people rooting for them in the build up to 2020 in 2021 in Tokyo.
I gotta say, Keith, I've had some experience with, you're calling out some of your athletes. They're just being very active with their communities on social. I had 2 really real experiences that stand out. One, I see a live video go up on Instagram of Emma. I click on it, and it's her and Joe at home, and all of a sudden I get called in to their live video, and I'm challenged to a flip cup competition. So
yes.
I got to.
Very good. I missed that, but yes, I heard about it. I didn't know you
lost.
were.
Yeah.
Did you to Emma
Yeah.
or to Joe?
I did.
I mean, I would have thought
that. Well, it was 2 against 1. I had to go 2 cups. They only did 1 each.
You would strike me as prolific in the flip cup game.
I don't know if that's good or bad, but
I don't know.
I gotta say, the other one I saw was, so I see it. Boom! we're getting winded down at night, me and my fiance, and Sydney McLaughlin has a live video pop up, and I click on it, and it was actually really cool. She's calling, or she's allowing guests on following her live stream to come on and ask questions live to her, and I thought it was really cool. I happened to tune in right when she had invited a guy to come on and ask a question, and of course his question is, so what kind of guys do you go after, or like, are you interested in? And I was like, oh man, this is his shot.
This is it. I'm sure a lot of our team get that question, get those questions. We don't have many dudes on Team NB. It's all ladies. So yeah, but yeah, Sydney's they're prolific. I mean, it's a different day, and they're so natural and good at it. And I mean, Sid is, she's such a high engagement following, like 100,000 likes every time she posts something. It's incredible. She's absolutely amazing. But yeah, I obviously follow every single athlete, and we have some really, really fun ones. So we have a dude in the UK, Harry Akins. He's a sprinter, unbelievable on social, and you should check him out. And then yeah, Emma's so fit and so ripped, and she's putting up her workouts and she's sharing her core routines, and it makes me feel bad about myself because I can't do any of it. But so many people are motivated and so many people are inspired by it that I love it. I love the role that athletes play in our brand. And people ask me all the time, like, so, what do you sponsor a runner? What does a runner do? I'm like, a runner does everything. Running is a sport. It's a pastime. It's a fitness activity, but running is a true sport. And these girls are incredible at what they do. They're the best in the world at what they do. And to be able to engage with them all the time I have to remind myself that it's a very privileged position to be in, because I love the sport and I'm friends with some of these runners, and yeah, they want to share the love. They want to share their own brand, and they want to share as much as they can and support the industry outside of running, because outside of racing, because the industry is what props up racing, and they all know that. They understand the business side. They know we have to sell shoes and apparel, so they want to work with running specialty stores. Jenny last night was amazing, talking about running specialty and the role that a running specialty store in Florida, Track Shack, played in her career. And it's awesome. So we can connect the dots, and I'm very privileged to be able to work with the customers and the athletes and connect both of them together.
Really cool.
Keith, I'm curious, these athletes are, they're fulfilling their part as being sponsored athletes, as creating, as, building kind of their own brand, and, being approachable to their fans and kind of creating this identity around them outside of racing. But there is no racing this year, and that is a big part of a lot of these athletes' contracts, and a lot of part of their overall incomes. And I'm curious, and I don't know if you can speak to the sports marketing perspective of this, but a lot of agents, we've had a couple agents, a couple athletes, and a couple coaches on the pod who there's definitely a uncertainty and an anxiety about how brands are approaching athletes and contracts over the next couple of years. I think primarily we know that a lot of contracts are built around, or many of them have been built in the past around an Olympic year and around Olympic performances. And I guess my question to the brands is, what happens to an athlete whose contract is based on their performance, or based on their Olympic performance, or is just set to end at the end of this Olympic year? How are you navigating those negotiations?
Yeah, so John Evans is our, senior director of global sports marketing, and we have Pete Riley in the UK, He also manages global athletes. I think they're two of the best guys in the business. I think John, his track record has proven that he's the best guy in the business. I can only speak to New Balance, but New Balance has a very, very, athlete first mindset when it comes to contracts. So, when you will remember that there was a lot of controversy recently around female runners who were pregnant and how they would lose some of their income because of taking time out to have a baby, or taking time out after they have a baby and not coming back. New Balance never had those reduction clauses in their contracts because it's very athlete first. It's very pro athlete. The most contracts are 4 years with an optional year. So hopefully most of the athletes have the optional year coming out of this Olympic cycle. I can't speak to the specific contracts, but it's certainly not John or New Balance's intention to cut anyone because of this, and it's just not in the DNA of how New Balance functions as a company. If an athlete is being cut at the end of this year, it's probably because they're either at the end of their career, or they weren't going to make the Olympics and they were already on a downward trajectory towards the end of their contract and expected to be cut. So none of our athletes would be suffering none of the New Balance athletes would be suffering that anxiety, but I'm sure other brands they would be. And it's a really, really tough time for an athlete. I think the most pressing issue for athletes is athletes coming out of the NCAA right now, because I don't know if brands are going to be quick to sign athletes in June when they typically would be available for signing, especially if there's no competition this year. So our brand's just going to say, you know what, we're going to roll the dice and wait and save budget for this year and hope that XYZ athlete doesn't have a contract and we can sign them in the fall, or we can sign them in 2021. So I think it's going to be really tricky, and there's some really good athletes coming out of the NCAA, as you guys know. So that would be, there's a lot of anxiety there, and I don't know what New Balance's plans are right now, but I haven't heard anything. I'm sure John has a master plan, but to just go back to your question, it is a very tough time for athletes. They're not making as much income this year, but again, lots of people are not making as much income. Lots of employees have been furloughed. So the industry as a whole has been affected, and athletes are not immune to that. So they've been affected, but hopefully Team NB feels confident that NB will do right by them. And I feel confident that NB will do right by all of our athletes. We always have, and I don't see that changing as we head into 2021.
Keith, kind of following up with that, I mean, some of the other structures that are common in contracts are based around kind of bonuses that are earned through performance, and those bonuses carry over to the next year, and performances help you keep those financial levels, right? I mean, in a scenario where there's a bonus to a performance and there's no performances this year, are athletes at risk of losing that money, or will that be honored through 21?
I don't know how individual contracts are written, because they're all written differently. Some have different most have different bonus structures. So if someone had a rollover bonus that was only a 1-year rollover bonus and they didn't achieve the bonus again, I imagine that they won't get that money for 2021. If they have a rollover bonus that's just added to their base contract and they're extended, or they have a contract, then they will get it. Again, I can speak to New Balance. We've always done right by athletes in terms of bonuses, and we've paid out bonuses at times when athletes, legitimately based on their contract didn't get the bonus, or we could have taken a bonus back and we didn't. So, we've always done right by the athlete on bonuses. I do think, it's not going to be a perfect scenario, and you can't, if an athlete has a contract that's heavily bonus incentivized and there's no track season, I guess that's just going to be an unfortunate outcome of this, and they're not going to make as much money, and they're going to roll into next year. But hopefully they roll into next year hungry and to achieve those bonuses. There's a big scale of athletes. Jenny Simpson probably doesn't have to worry about it as much, or Sydney McLaughlin doesn't have to worry about it as much. but maybe some of the athletes that are not as on bigger contracts but are fit, they're going to be frustrated because they probably had a bunch of incentives that they knew they could achieve. So I'm not too sure what it's going to look like. Hopefully we do get some races, but I don't think we're going to. So it's going to be tough on some athletes and fine on others. But I keep reiterating, John Evans always does right by the athlete. So if an athlete needs a bit of help as they head into next year because of this year, I'm sure John will do everything he can to help them.
And I think it will probably be an eye opener for athletes. And I'm not speaking specifically New Balance, everybody. I think I've heard of scenarios when athletes, especially are first signing, they weigh out the potential money versus the guaranteed money, the base versus the bonus structure. And these are obviously extreme scenarios you'd never imagine, but I think it definitely is something for athletes to consider, especially athletes that are coming out and are new to this. There's a risk and reward to all these structures, and really thinking through scenarios and what makes sense.
Absolutely. Yeah. And, it's like that in everything, right? In the stock market and with the economy. Yeah. It's risk reward. And some people have made a ton of money as a result of going heavily bonused because they knew they were going to run really, really fast times and make US championships and get rollover bonuses that then are significantly higher than the contracts they would have got had they just taken a heavy annual contract with low bonuses. It's going to change the mindset for athletes for sure. And I sympathize with athletes, but I sympathize with people who've been furloughed and sympathize with people who work in the industry that have to close their doors right now. So it's kind of been affected across the board. Like we were talking about earlier on, though, with athletes' engagement, this is a great time for athletes to use their time to, work on injuries, work on getting fitter, work on getting stronger, and working and getting a fan base. Because if you have a following, that also helps with contracts and that also helps with your earning potential. There's a ton of athletes out there that are not necessarily the fastest athletes, but they're really, really good on social media and they've got really big followings. And you guys know this. And, they're good runners, but not as fast as some other runners, but they have a way bigger following because they just do cool content. And they will be successful in many other areas as well after running. So if I was an athlete right now, I'd be really working on that.
Yeah, I think that's a
content strategy.
Yeah. Well, I think it's effective to cat tent strategy.
Yeah, Lennox.
Lennox. Oh, like the hotel.
Correct.
In
where Evie and I had one of our first dates. Yes.
That for our audio listeners, we should let them know the cat.
Oh yeah, there's a cat.
Really, really hugging that mic.
Yes, I picked up the cat. Jumped on me there. He's a fantastic part of our family. We love him very much.
So hey Keith, I think it's interesting, and for one of the reasons we started this pod is to kind of make sure we tell everyone's story and everyone and every brand and everything that's contributing to the sport. And I think one thing that I try to steer away from is I think there's sometimes almost like a cynical pettiness sometimes about with track and field runners. There's kind of this everyone's against us. There's not enough money in the sport. There's just this constant kind of theme of everyone is against us and no one's investing in us enough. And I think sometimes brands get demonized, where I think it's important for us to have people like you on where you're humanizing the brand is also just people. And I think, we opened the show up with talking about, a big chunk of your workforce has been furloughed. They're out of work right now. And I think it's important for athletes to understand that this thing is affecting everyone, and for fans to understand that the brands they're not bulletproof at this point. And I think it's also important for athletes to understand that it's not about a brand, especially this year. If you're a senior, it's not about a brand believing in you or not believing in you. It's literally those dollars do not exist sometimes. And I think it's sometimes it's hard to really get people to believe that these budgets dry up really, really quickly. And I think hopefully we're pushing this message across that that what we have now is what we need to hold on to, and just like this positive intent from the brands. And I feel that from some people, but I think it's really hard for people to like truly trust the brands and truly trust the federations.
Yeah, I mean, the federations piece is probably a different conversation. But the brands, you're dead right. I get really frustrated when I hear people knock brands. It's a business. It's not philanthropy. You know, there's a reason we sponsor athletes. There's a reason why New Balance and put a strategy in place to develop a middle distance female program, because there was also a business component where we wanted younger athletes to think we were cool, and they didn't think we were cool 10 years ago, but now they do think we're cool. So it worked. There's a strategy behind sports marketing. It's not just, you know, sponsor an athlete, and if they don't, well, you know, I see New Balance making loads of money. Why can't they give me $5,000 or $10,000 a year? It's not like that. There is a budget, and then when that budget is exhausted, that's it. We can't sign more athletes. And then there's a lot of cost that goes into an athlete. Like when you sign an athlete, then you want to work with a flow track so we can tell the athlete's story and get that athlete more followers and push the New Balance brand out there. So there's a lot of ancillary cost around sponsoring an athlete. But the federations, I think, you know, have made it difficult. They've made it hard on the brands and on things that brands can do, like logo sizes and stuff like that. That does get really, really frustrating. And then for athletes to not be allowed secondary sponsors, whether brands like that or not, I personally think they should be allowed a secondary sponsor. But the federations won't allow that, and that's some earning potential. So the sport in some ways is a little bit behind, but I think the brands are doing their best, and it's not a charity. The brands want to sponsor athletes because they believe in the athletes and they believe in the relationship that the athlete can bring to the table for the brand to get new customers or to shore up their customer base. So when especially brands that are vertical and running, like, you know, Hoka and Brooks, like, they do really good jobs with their athletes. They bring the athletes into the brand. Then a brand like New Balance, we're across multiple sports. We don't have the huge athlete stable, but the athletes we do have are so involved in the brand, and it's such a rich relationship that it drives me insane when people criticize us for not sponsoring someone, or for, you know, if we discontinue a relationship with someone and we get criticized. You kind of can't win on all the time. So you kind of shut out the noise. You do your best. And if you talk to our athletes, or if any fan of the track spoke to one of our athletes and said, how's your relationship with New Balance, they'd hear nothing but glowing reviews. And I think that's why a lot of athletes want to sign with New Balance, because New Balance does have a really, really strong relationship and family value attitude that they bring to running. But that was a long answer to the question about cynicism in the sport. Yeah, the sport has cynicism from the fans and from some athletes, and it's not always fair. Running's not always fair. It's a brutal game to be in, you know, like cycling and some of these other sports where your body can only take so much, and it's not always someone else's responsibility. It's sometimes your own responsibility, and you can't just blame your sponsor if things are going pear-shaped and you're not making enough money.
Keith, you mentioned people, you know, athletes wanting to sign with New Balance, and you also referenced a moment ago NCAA athletes right now. Those are some of the people that probably want to sign with New Balance, and they're in a tough spot. And, you know, I'm curious from your perspective as an athlete, you know, first, and then from the brand perspective, what, you know, they've been given this spring eligibility back, these seniors, right? And some of them had the opportunity probably to go pro after this year. Now they have to weigh out, do I take a chance and try to get a contract? Do I go back to school and, you know, kind of run unattached for a few months and then wait for my spring season to start? How would you navigate that situation as an athlete? And any recommendation from the brand perspective on how to navigate those waters?
I personally would go back. unless I was a complete superstar, unless I was Sydney McLaughlin coming out, I would go back. The extra year, I mean, being a college athlete, being a good college athlete is as good a life as you can have. I mean, it's as good as the pro life. I thought Jenny Simpson mentioned it last night. That she said her 5th year, when she came out of school to a big contract, and she was a superstar. But navigating the pro life, where you don't have sports therapy on hand whenever you want, you don't have meals on hand whenever you want, you don't have the equipment room to do your laundry. Like, stuff gets it gets a little bit difficult. So if I was an athlete right now, I'd probably go back and take advantage of having more time in the collegiate system and age group competition, versus taking sponsorship that you probably don't want, but that's all that's available. And then from the brand's perspective, it's an opportunistic time, especially for some of the emerging brands that maybe wouldn't be at the table for the best 1500-meter runner coming out of school. Well, maybe New Balance and maybe Nike and Adidas are holding on spending right now, so it's an opportunity to pick up someone who does want to come out. So it's an opportunistic time. But if I was an athlete, I'd probably take advantage of staying in school right now and staying in a professional setup that was going to be low stress, and roll the dice for another year of collegiate competition. I did a 5th year, and it changed my life.
Yeah.
I always tell people that 5th year of college changed my life. It was best year. That's when I won nationals. That's when I had to finish 24th in the worlds. All my 5th year. If I didn't have a 5th year, I would have been screwed. So awesome.
I did a 5th year and I got injured, so I had the opposite experience. So, but you know what? I then stayed for a 6-year grad school, and I picked up tennis. So now I play. Now I play once every 3 months. It's great.
Awesome.
But so I want to touch something else that you brought up, Keith. And if you can see, I'm wearing. It goes along with this hat I'm wearing. Flow Bikes. Not only do I do some work for Flow Bikes, but I knew you'd be on the show today. So
thank you. I love cycling.
So yeah, if people don't know much about Keith outside of running, he loves music, he loves cycling, and you brought up cycling a moment ago, and I want to get your thoughts and experience within cycling, as what you see. Do you see cycling doing things significantly different that has a positive impact on the sport, and anything in there that we can learn in running and in track and field?
Yeah, there's lots of crossover. I mean, both sports are really tough. There's no doubt about it. I think overall cycling might be a little bit tougher with the crashes and with the short-term contracts. There's not many 4-year deals in cycling. When you get on a team, they're usually 2-year deals. So, but there's a lot to be learned from cycling as well. The way cycling teams operate, it's a lot of sponsors that come in. So there's a lot of income from different areas, and then there's no pressure on the riders to win prize money, because if someone on the team wins the race, all the worker riders, all the other riders, they get the benefit. So when Rigoberto Urán finished 3rd at the Tour de France, the whole of the EF team got the benefit from it. So running is still quite individual in so far as, like, if Team NB has 2 athletes, if Jenny Simpson and Brenda Martinez are both in the final of the Olympic trials, and Jenny wins and Brenda's 4th or 3rd, it's not like they split the prize money because they're both on New Balance. They're still individuals. So I think I would love to see more of the team aspect of cycling come across to running, where there'll be some tactics at play. I'd love to see a meet where it was a bunch of New Balance athletes and Nike athletes and Brooks athletes all competing against each other, but there was like a little bit of a team tactic to it. If there was an athlete that could go hard from the gun, knowing that they're going to blow up, to be pacing for someone else on their team, I think that some of that would be great. But overall, logistically, cycling is a big pain in the arse. It's I've traveled a lot with the EF team, and New Balance sponsored the EF team, and I helped out with that deal. man, it's logistically, it's a big deal. It's a big nightmare. There's races going on in different countries around the world. It's truly a global sport. Team buses and mechanics and service courses where they have all the bikes and wheels and all the parts all housed, and they have to ship them to races all over the world. So cycling is really tough, and that's why it requires a lot of sponsors. But it's a beautiful sport, and it's very like running insofar as it's super hard, and you have to really like to suffer, and you have to really like competition and repeating mantras to yourself that like this sucks, this is tough, but I love it, and I love the feeling I get from it. So it's great to see, and some runners have made really great crossover into cycling. Mike Woods being the main man. You know, one of the great stories. It frustrates me that not enough people realize the accomplishment of this guy. I call him a kid. He's not a kid. He came to cycling super late. I remember Woodsy when he came. I was still racing in New England, and he was racing for the Garneau team out of Quebec, and he came down. And he was in some of our races in New England, and he was so good. And I knew he was really good runner, but he had similar stuff to me. Like, he was such a good runner. He was a much better runner than I was, but he just kept getting injured. So what do you do? You just can't. You can't. I tried it for years to just like, I'm gonna wake up tomorrow and all my injuries are gonna be gone. Woodsy just happened to catch it early enough where he was like, you know what, this sucks. I love running, but I keep getting broken bones in my foot. I can't deal with this. Took up cycling, transferred his running fitness to cycling, finished third in the World Championships. Is winning stages at Grand Tours like the Vuelta is considered, a favorite at a classic like Liège-Bastogne-Liège, which is like being a favorite at the New York City Marathon. And he took up cycling when he was 24. It's incredible. And people talk about him. Mike Woods is the only sub 4 minute miler in history to participate in the Tour de France. I'm like, forget that. Mike Woods is the only sub 4 minute miler to do anything in cycling. Every race he races, he's the first sub 4 minute miler in history. So I don't know if people understand the scope of his accomplishments in cycling and in running, but to do both of them in a lifetime is going to be unmatched. We will not see it again. So that's the biggest crossover between cycling and running. The engine just needs to be applied a little bit differently. And if applied right, you can be good.
I was going to, I don't know if you're able to put this into perspective, but I mean, he's obviously, as you're talking, winning stages at Grand Tours, third in the world. To even make a team, to be on one of those pro teams, I mean, should a runner be like, oh, he did it, I could probably make a team? How hard is it even to be at that level?
It's really hard. Yeah, it's really hard and requires a lot of skill and requires luck. But I think Mike shows that, having a background in running and having a background in the fitness and that you get from running is harder in some ways. Cycling at the high end is really hard. Because you can go deeper on a bike than you can in running. So in running, you're limited by your mechanics. Eventually, when you hit the wall in the marathon and you run out of fuel, you're kind of done. There's no comeback. Whereas in cycling, you can just back off, eat 2 Snickers bars and drink a can of Coke, and then suddenly the engine revs up again, and then you're like, okay, now I'm feeling good again. Now I have to go again. So you can do these long sustained efforts that are really hard and just keep fueling. So, but the engine that you develop in those years in running, you go to empty, and I think it just makes you really efficient, because most good runners I know that crossed over into cycling became good really quickly. And Dan Lincoln, at the end of his running career, became a cyclist. Boom, very good, very quickly. I was good. I went Cat 5 to Cat 1 in a season, purely coming off running fitness. And I didn't even have great running fitness. I have years of it, but at that time I was probably doing more beer drinking than I was running, and going to more concerts than I was running. Woodsy just happened to take up cycling really immediately after being in 3:38 1500 meter shape. So he showed that it can be done. But I also think that Mike Woods based on the times he ran as a junior, is just truly gifted. He's still Canadian record holder, sub 8 minutes for 3,000 meters in high school. He's in the real elite. But Chad Hall, Ryan Hall's brother, he's a really, really good runner. Freddie Ovette's a pro cyclist, and he started out as a runner for a long time. Steve Ovette's son, the great Steve Ovette. So there is a lot of examples of runners that became good cyclists. But Woodsy's the creme de la creme, for sure.
Well, I don't mean to sidetrack us on the cycling too much, but I guess to close that piece out, do you feel like brands would be like taking that team aspect and scenario? It seems like that's a greater investment, right, into getting athletes and building a team and actually being able to set up something that allows that kind of competition. I mean, would brands invest into that kind of scenario?
I don't know if the consumer demand is there. I think it used to be like that with cross country. That's why I love college, right? Because college is essentially that. The NCAA, when you're on a track team that's vying for an NCAA title, you'll see the 10,000 meter runners actually really care about what's going on in the discus or what's going on in the pole vault, because they've got someone there that's going to get points. So I think college still has a little bit of that spirit, and obviously cross country, NCAA cross country, I think is arguably one of the greatest single day running events on the calendar because of the team aspect. But back in the day, I believe even at USATF, the way the brands would approach cross country, they approached it like that. So Mark Coogan would tell us that like Team New Balance would all show up to the USA cross country champs, and Team Nike would be there, and Adidas would be there, and Reebok would be there. And there was definitely a lot of like intra brand competition. But that's kind of gone away now because, unfortunately, runners don't really care about the USATF cross country championships anymore. So it's not as prevalent as it used to be. But I think in cross country we could bring it back, bring back a little bit of inter-brand battles, and I think it would be pretty awesome. And then everyone gets together afterwards and has a beer to celebrate. I'd love to see it.
I like it. I like it. I mean, people have been trying to do the team thing forever, trying to figure that out. I think really the brand piece makes it easy.
Yeah, and
we got to make club cross. It's got to be the same. And I think they're going to try it. I think that's coming up. Like, how do we create that? That great culture weekend of that is club cross and that identity, and like USATF cross championships should just be the same event. They have to happen on the same weekend. It's the same people who want to watch the elites race. It's the same community. Yeah. Like, run it together. That would just be a giant party for everyone. We can't. We're not in a place. The sport's not in a place where we can afford to put on multiple national championships, I think. So,
no. I love cross country, man. It's so good, and I just wish that. And I think that I actually don't blame the brands on this, and I blame a lot of the athletes. A lot of athletes just don't want to do it. A lot of pro athletes, they're getting ready for Stanford, and they're getting ready for these races in the spring, and they're like, I'm not going to go and risk turning my ankle on some cross country course somewhere. But man, it's so good. I would love if it was in contracts that athletes had to participate, and you could see the whole gauntlet. You could see a Team Nike against a Team New Balance and against a Team Adidas and against a Team Hoka, and just see them out there competing for their brands. Like in college, I think it would be amazing. And I think the interest would come back to cross country, but I have a bias towards cross country. It's my favorite discipline of the athletics world.
Great. Well, I think we're getting some good momentum chatting about how what are some innovative way brands can approach the sport. And I think this will be our closeout for you, Keith. We kind of end some of our interviews with what are the questions you need answered now. And I think for you and a brand, I guess our question to you is, what roles do brands have in supporting the sport while we work through this pandemic?
Yeah, I think we have a role. We owe it to our athletes to support the sport. So if you are a brand that sponsors an athlete, that means you're committed to sponsoring that athlete's endeavor. So as far as the elite sport goes, I think brands, do owe it to athletes and do owe it to the fans to make sure that we don't divest, and we continue to invest, and we continue to make sure that we don't lose fans as a result of the pandemic. And the fact that we have so many fans that only come and go during Olympic cycles, I think it's going to be a tricky year. But we want to ensure that we're still committed and show the athletes that we're still committed, so to keep them motivated. Like the Olympic trials, were you guys in Atlanta at the Olympic trials? Ryan, you were, right? Yeah. So it was incredible, and it was probably the highlight of the year as far as elite athletics goes in North America. I felt so good coming out of that. The pandemic kind of kicked in that week, but I felt so good coming out of that, the state of the sport and the potential of the sport, that there was so many people down there that were fans of. It was like Eugene track was brought to the roads, and so many people were fans, and so many people were following exactly what was going on and knew exactly what was at stake. And then they also knew the people who had no hope of making the Olympic Games, but that was their Olympic Games, the Olympic trials, and they brought out their entire families just to watch them in their greatest moment in running. So I'm optimistic that the fans, there's a lot of interest there. We just can't divest. We can't suddenly say, you know what, this is an off year, so let's just not do anything this year. I think the brands have to commit to the athletes they sponsor, and have to commit to the sport. A lot of people buy running shoes that don't care about track and field, and we get that. And track and field is a small part of the entire running ecosystem, but track and field, road running, big city marathons, we're all invested in all of them, and we need to continue to operate as business as usual, in my opinion.
Keith, great insight. We really appreciate you coming on. I mean, this is it's obviously a tough time. It's a lot to share, and kind of having a look under the hood at how New Balance is handling it, approaching it, and how they're moving ahead right now is, I think it's really valuable for people to understand, because the brand piece is a big piece of the sport. So we really, really appreciate you taking the time to chat with us.
Yeah. And the sport, the health of the sport is the fans, is the athletes, is the federations, the brands, and then sponsors, getting the non-endemics in to support the sport as well. I think it's in a healthy place, and I think it will be in a healthy place after the pandemic. I also think running will be in a healthy place after the pandemic, and hopefully people realize that, you got to be healthy. You got to look after yourself. When there's times like this, it makes me very happy to know that I am healthy, and that I have a good set of lungs on me, and that I've been working my heart, and I've been working my body. So people need to get active. They need to get fitter. They need to realize, a lot of people are dying, and it's really, really sad, and it puts sport in perspective. But from an individual perspective, you need to look after yourself, and running is a great way, and a low barrier, and an amazing goal setting accomplishment. Like, you can go out, and I've been telling people, I'm like, if you have no competition and you were planning on doing a summer half marathon and that was your goal, find a 3-mile loop near your house that's not got many people on it, and run it really hard, and then run it again really hard 2 weeks later, and compare your times. And you can challenge yourself in running in so many easy ways that you don't need to do it in big races. So hopefully people run. And I like everyone else, I'm doing my best to stay at home, stay away from others. I haven't ridden the bike with another person in over a month. And just speaking to Evie last night, I actually haven't physically touched another human being in over a month, which is very strange for me. I'm a big hugger, and very much about the people. So just thanks for having me on, lads. I know it's a tough time, and but I'm proud of how people are operating. People are staying at home, and it's great to see you guys doing a podcast. Big fan, long-time fan of the Flow Track and the Flow Sports organizations. Delighted to see Flow bikes taken. Delighted to see Flow bikes taken off. I absolutely love the content, and I watch. Ryan, I told you this. I watch almost exclusively Flow bikes content over Flow Track content these days.
That's all right. Hey, all the love's going to one place. I like it.
Yeah, it's all there. So thank you guys for doing what you're doing. Alex, great to have you back in the mix. And
thanks, Keith.
from
Appreciate it.
yeah, fantastic. I didn't know you were up in Minnesota, but I hope everything's going well in your worlds, and I hope you and your families and everyone else at the Flow Track group and the Flow organization is doing great. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, we appreciate it, Keith. We'll
Good
talk to you
see you,
soon. For people that don't know, it is dinner time right now, and I was definitely throwing my run out the window today. But after hearing Keith give his take on running and what it means and how important it is, I would feel really guilty to not get out there today. So Al, we're going to make this quick, and I'm going to get a run in tonight.
That's good.
So,
That's good. I think, yeah, it's some motivating stuff. And he said, if you got the body, some people aren't good at running. There's some people just aren't built to run, like us with our donkey legs.
Yeah, I'm feeling pain every time out now, but it's fine. I'll deal with it. I mean, so there, I think we said it at the start. Just a very informative, charismatic guy, Keith Kelly is, and I think he gave a lot of really valuable insight. I think one of the biggest takeaways I had from our talk with Keith was, right now everyone's going through a tough time. Brands, I mean, New Balance just furloughed a large amount of people at their company. Everyone is getting hit with this. The reason we brought Keith on, one of the big factors was there was a lot of questions from athletes on how brands are handling contracts and how they're going to get through this. And I think Keith was very honest with how that approach is going to happen. And I think it's probably, he wasn't speaking for other brands, but I feel like it's probably an approach that most brands will take. It's important that both brands and athletes realize that they're going to have tough conversations. They're going to have to go into it with open minds and go into it with the understanding that each side is going into it with the best intentions possible, but also knowing they're both getting hit really hard. And we got to come out of this, right? That's the thing, is everyone has to survive coming out of this to be in a position to take really positive steps forward when it's time.
Right. And I think, it's a strong term to use, but it was in the podcast, he said, this is not a charity. And I think we have to grasp that. And yes, can athlete contracts be healthier? Can our overall sport be healthier? Yes, I'm pushing and fighting for that, every day. But we also have to have adult conversations here. And I think it's important, even when I was at Adi, we talk about it. You're never petty between brands. You're competitive, but you support the people in the brands. And I think, even if there was an athlete that, I was able to slide a little bit of gear towards here and there, or a travel stipend for a while, and that athlete ended up signing a better contract with another company, awesome. There is no animosity there. So I think, just like the brand is going to make some tough decisions, athletes, you have to be ready to make some tough decisions too. And if a better opportunity comes on your plate, you have to take it. It's okay to take guaranteed money. Okay. I won't demonize anyone for taking a better deal. There's no such thing as being selfish when it comes to your career.
Yeah, especially right now. I mean, it's really important. It's really important because not only do you have to get through this year, but you now have to get ready for the Olympic year. And you obviously need to be financially in a good position to give yourself the resources you need to be training and getting ready at your highest level. Right. So, so I think it's a really good point.
And brands, you have to understand, brands are trying to get their marketing dollars to work as much as they possibly can right now. A lot of if you look at any recession case studies right now, which is what we're doing at our company, is there's so many, uses and case studies that point to the fact that you can't pull marketing out right now. You can't go dark. So those who, and I think Keith might have said it, but those who divest die. There's countless times where we see that a brand pulls back on their overall media presence and they try to crank it back up on the other side of the recession, and they've already lost that brand identity. If you bail out and you try to, start doing a bunch of promotional advertising during a recession and just kind of go for the cheap placements right now, you lose your brand identity. And your brand identity is what is going to get you through these hard times. It's not about a specific product launch. It's about investing in the core of your brand, and you lose that trust from the consumer if you go lights out during a recession.
And I think that's something good for athletes to understand, right? Because they right now are an extension of the brand, right? And for them, we talked about how do you show value in a time where you're not competing and not showing value in the normal way you would. And I think that is something that's a great call out for them to understand. And I think Keith hit that very directly. And I appreciated how direct he was, like the people that have, like, this is a time to build a following, right? And if you haven't already, and the people that have a following and are connecting with those communities are valuable. And in some cases more valuable than the person that's faster than them. So, I think your point, Al, is a very good one. Be an extension of the brand and help them be front and center right now, and don't go dark. Just like the brand shouldn't go dark, the athlete shouldn't be going dark at this time.
Exactly. But also, I would say, like, you're not just only an arm of the brand, right? Think of the brand being an arm of you, right? You have multiple ways that you can touch a consumer. Your sponsorship with this shoe brand is just one of them. Okay, don't view your identity through the lens of you are a X brand athlete. It has to be part of your overall kind of package offering. So, and I think, and it's not just about followers. Like, guys, I know, like, we can go crazy over, you don't have to sell out, is what I'm saying. Brands appreciate true, honest engagement. And, like, I can tell you from media agencies now, like, people aren't just searching for the people with the most likes and the most followers. It's about engagement and honest. It's about that tail that you can create, right, for the brand. And so don't get buried and worried about, quantity over quality.
I think that's good advice, and that's where we should end it. Athletes, you have some answers, you have some insight. I think for all of us gained some great insight there. Even to college athletes that are thinking about what they should be doing, some great insight and thought on, good reasons to stay at school while you still have resources that are available to you during a tough time. So, I think all in all, really, again, pushing this conversation forward and learning some great insight from every sector of the industry that we can right now, and moving things forward. So, Al, as always, it's a pleasure.
Till they get grayer and fuller next week.
Next week with a new name. We'll see you guys soon. Thanks for tuning in.